Alrighty. Now we got everyone here. So, hello everyone. We'll be speaking about chain abstraction, the practical and technical implementations of chain abstraction. I'm Nick from Cointelegraph, the oldest and the largest Web3 media in space. And I'll be your moderator today. Really excited. So, chain abstraction has become kind of a buzzword recently. So let's figure out what's that first. So if you could start with a quick round of introductions of yourself, of your company, it would be great. And also please elaborate on what is chain abstraction in your own words, because somebody might not know it at this point. And also, why do you think it matters that much for the blockchain space? Would you like to be first?
Sure, I'll go first, and it's a big panel, so I'll try to keep it short. I'm Hart, I'm the co-founder of Across. Across is known as a bridge, but I'd say bridges are dead. We can talk about that too. Cross-chain interop, we are intent-based. I don't think we are the originator of the word intent. I think Arjun might get that, but we've adopted it as our it is our core architecture of using intents to have very fast and high-speed bridging. Chain abstraction and why it matters in a sentence: users want to click buttons and have them do things. That's it. Oh, you lost your microphone.
Give it away. Hi, I'm Mayur. I'm the founder of Arcana. I've been in crypto since 2017. At Arcana, we like to say that we are in the business of abstractions. We believe it's our strongest suite. We like to basically make things easy by hiding away complexities. It's what we do, and we think we're pretty good at it. Chain abstraction, why is it relevant?
Important.
Important. Okay, yeah. So we went on this journey ourselves of trying to figure out how do we improve user experiences in Web3? And we started out with the wallet, first wallet and private keys. We helped abstract that, basically get users from landing pages of apps to homepage. Then we did gas abstraction, which is basically allowing users to interact and get from homepage to checkout. And then very logically, we believe that the next big problem is actually getting the users to spend whatever monies they have anywhere near instantly. And if you can make that happen, that's an instant 10x unlock for users, because they can spend more and do more. So yeah.
Arjun?
Hi, I'm Arjun, one of the founders of Everclear. We were previously known as Connext. Everclear is we were one of the first intent-based bridges back in 2021. And then in the process of doing that, we kind of saw that there was this very deep-seated problem associated with intents and how solvers, the people that are actually filling transactions across chains, can operate successfully and actually make a profit. And so we ended up building Everclear as a solution to our own problem, which has now become a solution to many other people's problems as intents have gotten picked up. What is chain abstraction? Chain abstraction is a vision for the future where users never need to know or care what chain they're on. And why is it important? Well, there's a little known secret, which is that 100% of the people that are not in crypto do not give a shit about blockchains. And so they shouldn't need to, right? If you're a user of YouTube, you don't need to understand how YouTube works. And I think that that's part of what makes YouTube special, is that you can get cat videos without needing to know how it works. We need to get blockchain apps to work the same way.
Cool. All right, already a lot of great stuff spoken about it. So my name is Tarik Moon, one of the founders of Affine. So Affine is a liquid restaking token that is really trying to bring values across all the different chains. And that's why it's actually super important for us while we're a restaking token to talk about chain abstraction. In terms of our key value proposition, I mean, everybody and their mom is doing restaking in some shape or form in DeFi these days, right? So the way we are differentiating ourselves is that, one, we are trying to be omni-chain. The vision is that Ethereum denominated value or any kind of Bitcoin denominated value that should be available in liquid form across all of different chains. So that's our kind of overall vision in the very sense of chain abstraction. The second part is security. So we have, basically our team comes from risk management background and hedge fund background. So we have done risk management for many, many years. So we want to bring that expertise into risk taking to ensure that this almost like, almost leverage collateral that is validating many, many different services and making even BTC and other tokens productive. While doing that, we don't bring back like a Terra Luna kind of situation and collapse, right? So we want to do the risk management really well. So those are the two main things that we're differentiating ourselves in. Now, in terms of the chain abstraction, why it's very important for us is that we're actually first of all, we're consumers of many of these techs. So I can very intimately talk about Across and Everclear and all of this because we use them. So for us, why that is important and why our users love this is that they don't really want to care about where they put their ETH. They want to be like, oh, I want to farm in Blast now, but if I don't like it, I want to have the freedom to be able to farm in Tyco or some other new chains, right? Or more maybe less degen way to say about it is that I don't want to care about where my product builder wants my value to be. I just want to be there. So that's why it's very important for us to be able to use this technology, and we have been really enjoying using many of these technologies. And I think it's very important for the future.
Awesome. My name's Teagan. I'm the ecosystem lead for Supra. Supra, we've recently rebranded to being a layer 1 blockchain that is app chain and infrastructure focused. So as a brief history, we are best known for starting out in the space and a go-to-market as an Oracle provider. What we're doing is vertically integrating Oracle, VRF, automation, and cross-chain messaging, these type of services, into the node level of the blockchain, allowing for zero block delay and fulfillment of this type of, in consuming this. Additionally, being app chain focused, what we're really trying to solve, and I think is going to be lowering the headache for a lot of my panelists, is reducing the need for the amount of L2s and L3s that needs to be created in this space. Why? It's because we've been able to build out an architecture where you can create your own walled gardens within and enshrined within our layer 1 chain. So you can have dedicated execution environments, you can customize the gas tokens, do KYC gating. All of the main value props and reasons a lot of L2s and L3s are going to market now, we're going to allow that natively on Supra L1 with one RPC, with one global state, with sub-second latency and cross VM and transfers within our ecosystem. So why chain abstraction is very important to us is because we want to allow for more concentration of liquidity. Of course, composability is very important. We love composability. We want to be composable and integrate with many different bridging protocols, et cetera. But we do think having a hyper scalable, very low latency chain that users can all interact upon and have their liquidity concentrated on will be able to provide the best type of UX.
Cool. So basically, all of you mentioned that the end goal of chain abstraction is to abstract the complexities from the users, so the users don't have a headache how to use it. Hart, you had a good point about the buttons. So we just want to click the buttons, right? We don't need to care what happens on a back end. And the question is, what do you do in particular to help users to simplify their experience? What kind of complexities do you abstract from the users?
I don't know if we're going to, does this work? It's off. Maybe it's off, yeah. Sorry. Hello. I got it. Yeah, still figuring out how to use technology. I think we'll probably run through the panel and everybody have their suggestion. I think there's different components and ingredients that are required here. What Across is focusing on today is speed. So start with a user experience where I can click a button and my action on another blockchain can happen in 2 seconds or next block. And we've made that a focus in bridging, traditional bridging, how to make that be very fast. It's not a far leap in the intent architecture to say, hey, I want to bridge funds and then do an action on that destination chain. That's like conceptually a clear leap. And what we can do today is we can bridge funds, so the solvers or relayers are the ones that are doing the bridging action on the destination chain. They can execute code. This is something that we actually probably haven't marketed enough. So they can execute arbitrary code when they have bridged those funds if that code today is unpermissioned. So because this third party is executing that code, they can't execute code that requires the owner of the account to sign off. And so I'll just say, like, today, from a chain abstraction, like marching in that direction, we can solve the speed thing, so the user clicks a button, and we can solve part of the way of executing code on destination chain. And I think I'll let the rest of the panel talk through all the other future ways we might be able to solve, other ways we can solve the execute any code on that chain. I think you might have some thoughts on this.
Yeah, so we definitely like to take this route of being more like normative about what the user experience should be, instead of letting 5 people decide 5 different ways of doing things. So so we have a wallet product which is very clearly defining user flow, and we feel that that's sort of important at this stage because it's such a new technology and there's so much room for innovation. But someone needs to take that stand and say, this is how it should be. we may fail, and users may not like it, but that's fine. Because until and unless you kind of show users exactly what it's going to be like, end of the day, we're just going to be sitting here doing panels and talking about stuff. So that's sort of like the approach that we take, and I alluded to this earlier. What we try and do is basically try and optimize on 3 things. Unify user balances, so I have an EOA with a wallet address. Unify my balances across all possible chains. Allow the user to spend those unified asset balances as one. That is what we ought to be able to enable next. And then finally, this should be really, really fast. This needs to be allowed to happen near instantly. That's when we feel that there will be that unlock. And I think the 4th thing that we would like to tack on later is basically allowing all of this to happen at low costs. I think Hart talked about this earlier, how it can get cheaper, and of course, once you have clearing layers, there can be great capital efficiency, and I think once those things come in, we can add this to the list of conveniences, and if we deliver this to users, I think it's really going to be game-changing.
So I can touch on the Everclear side of this briefly, but what I really want to do is comment on what you guys have said, because there's something really interesting there. So Everclear is not like directly solving a user-facing problem. It's solving, like when you're doing chain abstraction, or when you're using intents really specifically for chain abstraction, what you're basically doing is you're taking the complexity from the user and you're giving it to the solver. And you're like, look, you guys figure it out. And the solver has to do that, right? It's not like the complexity just disappears. The solver now has to figure out, okay, how do I get my capital, whatever. They're fronting the liquidity to do the interaction on the target chain, but then they have to figure out how to get their capital back. And that's basically what we help, right? Is we're fixing the solver user experience rather than the end user experience. Now, there's something really interesting that both of you kind of have mentioned, and that is that the current paradigm around chain abstraction and around intents very specifically, across chain intents, is around being able to make transactions to public functions, to things that are unpermissioned. And so it begs the question of okay, well, what about owner-only or admin-only functions? I spent years agonizing over this question of how could you build intents for owner-only and admin-only functions. I have since done therapy and no longer agonize over it. And I've come to the conclusion that you can't, unfortunately. You can't, because if you want some service provider, some third party, regardless of whether that's in this like kind of intent-based paradigm with like bridging as we see today, where you're using that like a UI or something like that, or in this like more implicit intent-based paradigm, like this pull paradigm that you see with like permissioning systems, where you can say, okay, just tap my balances from a bunch of places. In either of those cases, you still have this like restriction where you are relying on some third party to do this thing on your behalf. And that has to be a thing that that third party can do, which means it has to be a public function. Now the good thing is, every single application today that users use is public, right? Like, what are the private functions in this space? They're like DAO governance functions. They're like only owner functions. Do those need to happen in seconds? Probably not. And that's kind of the conclusion that I've come to, is like, maybe it's actually fine to have this paradigm. At least that's what I'm telling myself right now, so I stop worrying about it.
Well, okay, I think really quick, and I won't interrupt, but you can't, like, okay, so I think with the right type of account abstraction, so let's say like 7702, just to tell you how I think a world might go, you could imagine the user signs a message of what they want to do on the destination chain, and then the solver is responsible for bridging the funds and executing that message. So I do think we're not like that far away from a
We're
world
not, yeah. Like in a smart wallet paradigm, you can have this like signature-based mechanism, but even in that case, like, you know, it's like there's this question of like, well, under what are the things that users actually want to do?
So I agree, but it's like one of those things that if we're going to talk about pure abstraction, this is where I think there's a gradual process of getting there. Pure abstraction, I want to be able to say I can do anything, right? There is something nice about that. And so when we have a smart contract wallet paradigm that applies to existing EOAs and there's not a migration process, then I feel like we're going down the path of, hey, okay, this could be kind of cool.
Yeah.
I do think it's worth, and maybe it's something we'll talk on later, like how abstracted away do applications want chains to be? I think that's an interesting question, but we'll talk about that later, maybe.
So for people who are struggling to follow this, basically the disagreement here is around what is the market for abstraction? Is it users, or is it users and not protocols, or is it both users and protocols?
I can maybe like touch on from like a user experience in the sense that we are a protocol that use actually all of these technologies that these guys have built with, and as you guys can probably see that these guys have like years of experience building this great tech. So we use XERC20 standard, which is like pretty amazing, and we use across to, for example, send fund instantly across, no pun intended, from like L2s into L1s extremely quickly, which is very important for us as a LRT product, right? Because ultimately our users, once again, like our users being Ultra ETH or Ultra ETH as holders, which are our liquid restaking tokens, what they want to do is like they want to have balance almost in any chain where they get the best utility necessarily and best yield. So, and these kind of paradigms obviously allows us to be able to do that in the sense that users can move fund from layer 2 to layer 1 almost instantly, which given the current world, like it should take 7 days, right? So the magical experience here is that it doesn't take 7 days, it's instant, right? Which is what our users love, and they love using our token. And I can almost maybe give a bit more mainstream example why this is so important. So if you look at probably the most successful fintech app of our time, Robinhood, when you put money there, they abstract the experience of underlying moving it into a treasury bill like completely away from end user, right? So if you use Robinhood Gold, you put money there, it's instantly earning 5.5% yield or 5% yield, right? And you don't have to think about it. And when you want to buy a stock, it doesn't tell you, oh, like now you sell this on this like product or whatever, and then go buy a stock after like 2 business days or whatever, right? They don't tell you that. They instantly are able to convert that into a share buying option, right? Or if you want to buy an option, whatever instrument you want to buy. Which is why, like for example, now to get back to all this great technology into our LRT, that's why this paradigm is so important. Because when people are holding Ultra ETH, they're getting all of the yields that you can possibly get from ETH-denominated asset, right? So you can get the staking yield, you can get the restaking yield, you can get whatever incentive this new chain is providing, if you want to provide liquidity into a DEX, you get that, you get our points, all the above, right? And you don't even have to worry about, oh, like now if you want to go buy like, let's say like a meme coin, right? Like you don't have to worry about it. You can instantly exchange it for the other value, right, in exchange. Or if you want to go buy BTC, you can do that. So this is extremely powerful because user not only can move value across different assets, they can move also value across different chains. And this is really, really powerful. And our users have been overall really enjoying the fact that they don't have to make the choice, right, in terms of the value, like more than chain abstraction, it's almost like the value abstraction at a very high level, right? The value being different tokens or different yield-bearing assets. They don't really have to choose. They can just hold this one asset, and it can be anywhere. It can move into any token almost instantly. So all of these great technologies have been enabling us to do that. So, wanted to give shout out to these guys.
So I really like the conversations that have been going on here to the point where I kind of forgot the original question. So I'm just going to comment on and add on to what's been said here. For intents and having solvers execute this for end products, what we believe is some of the bottlenecks in this would be the slowest moving or the slowest component in that picture. Sometimes for applications, that's the infrastructure products. That's like Oracle's, getting the Oracle price feeds to sign off if the intent needs a Oracle price feed to execute. So baking this in at the chain level, having Oracle price feeds included in every block is one way where we're trying to improve upon this experience, allow for all this to happen with near zero delay. You guys are solving kind of the cross-chain messaging, making this very, very fast. We want to make sure that as the end product, or the dApps leveraging this can also build off of this and not have to experience additional interruptions. Another thing I think is quite interesting to explore with intent-based protocols is like when you broadcast this intent to the world, how would you avoid front running where like intent extractable value there?
Thank you. All right, so this point was a great thing to lead to my next question, because one of the points that I heard that I liked a lot is that in order for a user to get a simplified experience, this user has to delegate the responsibility to abstract all the complexities to the third party. So, and now you mentioned the potential front runs. So my question is, how can we make sure that we are secure and like your solution is secure? And what measures do you take to make it secure? Bye.
I'll try to go quick. Secure in what sense? So secure in the sense that user funds can't get stolen. I actually think the intent architecture does a very good job of that. As in, user funds are escrowed and not released to the solver until you, quote unquote, prove the intent was fulfilled. So then you have some security concerns around how you prove intents were fulfilled, but you have time to do that. This is one of the security advantages of the architecture. You have time, so you can take time gives you more options and more opportunities to choose a very secure way of proving the intent was fulfilled. If we want to talk about like front running and all that, like MEV leaking is a very real topic. And there's a lot to go into, but generally speaking, you solve this using the techniques that people are trying to use for solving MEV generally, and a core one is basically put an auction on it, or some sort of auction-like structure, where you auction off the value of that MEV and return it to the user. And I think these are all the types of things that you can do as intents come to leak more and more MEV. I think there's lots and lots of options, and we can learn from just single chain MEV leaking environments and basically copy paste many of the solutions.
They're literally mempools. So
say again?
Intent auctions are literally mempools.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's, lots there. That I'll try to keep it short because we have a big panel.
Our architecture very closely mirrors what Hart and the Across team do. I think just being able to kind of escrow user assets means that you don't have this scenario where the user either double spends assets, which would cheat the solver of funds due to them, and with some sort of authoritative way of letting this escrow know that this whole fill did indeed happen, then you're able to kind of, even guarantee like money's going back to the, like getting settled with the solver. So largely this architecture works, and I won't go as far as to comment on MEV. I think Hart and Arjun are probably better off doing that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously security means a lot of different things. I think that, implementation security, things like that, you improve with audits. The trust of the system is pretty robust. It's like literally the same model as atomic swaps, and that's been something that we've been doing since 2010 in this space. And, so I'll actually touch on a slightly different point, which is there's a common concern around intents and around chain abstraction, which is like, if I don't know what chain I'm on, how will I know the security assumptions of the underlying chain? How will I know that my transactions are secure? And this is a valid concern. And I think that the reason that people get, like, this is one of the main pushbacks that people have around chain abstraction is they're like, well, if you're abstracting all of this away, then like if someone is building on top of infrastructure that is not robust, or if someone's chain gets hacked, then how do you know, right? I think an answer to that, which is like we need the user to understand 100% of the security of like how a rollup works, is obviously not the right answer. I think the real answer is that like realistically over time, I expect that like users are not going to hold their funds on many different chains. There's probably just going to be like a set of chains where you have like smart accounts, wallets, and places where that are like much more secure, where users will hold funds, and then they'll use something like Across or any other intent-based protocol to go and interact on like a one-time basis with something, right? So you're sort of giving like permissions. It's almost like having like a wallet in like a lot of like fintech applications where you're sort of compartmentalizing your balance and saying, okay, this part of the balance has permissions to go and interact with this application for a short period of time, and you're basically only risking a small portion of your total balance. And even in that risk is minimized because, of course, it's the solver that is risking that when they're interacting with the chain on the target chain, and then they're expecting to get paid back. So yeah, I think there's a lot of like really like interesting nuances with the way that security works out related to this stuff that like need to be discussed more, but unfortunately have sort of like it's such a complex topic that it's like hard to dive into.
Yeah, I'll actually go a little deeper into the kind of value abstraction aspect of it and the chain abstraction security aspect of it instead of going to maybe the MEV part. So as once again, as a consumer of these protocols, so we have multiple layers that the way we think about this like security and like risk management, right? So first is kind of our own stuff, right? Like our own kind of code and everything and how we interact with these protocols and how secure that is. And then even one degree below that is like all the AVSs and stuff where we delegate our funds to how secure those are. And even above that is, like now if you think about it, like it's like a new L2 that is like new in the block. Is that chain secure enough, right? So I think there are many aspects of looking at it. The way we do it is that we have this layered security approach that we take. So from that perspective, like our fund, for example, are like in a very interesting way, actually, they're very segregated from the L2 context and L1 context. So just easy way to say it is that if you put money in our product, for example, in Ethereum, even if a layer 2 chain gets hacked, your L1 money is not going to be impacted. So that's one. The second thing is actually really exciting thing that we kind of inherited from XERC20, which is there's a limit we can set, right? Per lane and per context, per day, all sorts of different things, right? So we use those like very effectively to ensure that those things are safer. I'm not going to say it's like 200% safe because it's DeFi we're talking about, sadly, and we still have a lot to mature, but we use those to make sure that there's let's say like a majority of our fund is like safe. And then the last bit the way we ensure the safety of it is like we are trying to use various like predictive methods to kind of look at on-chain activities in collaboration with some of our partners to see if there's like kind of any kind of malicious activities that are happening cross-chain, and we'll pause the whole protocol if we need to, right? So there's like this layered approach that we have to take, and of course on top of it, like bug bounties, all of those other things that we have to do. But that is again coming from more of a consumer or like a DApp perspective or like a protocol perspective of security.
Yeah, I think what Arjun brought up about not knowing the security guarantees of some of the different chains that you might be interacting with when you're doing chain abstraction is something very important to consider. The way we're approaching this problem at Supra is we want to implement layer 1 guarantees vertically through our entire tech stack, allowing all the infrastructure products, including the bridging that you're using, to have the same base layer guarantees, security guarantees, as the chain you are interacting and using upon. So having node operators that are validating our chain also run the Oracle, also run some of the bridging nodes. We're building out our own canonical bridge. That is going to be very important in protecting and allowing for the same level of security guarantees throughout all of the operations that the users go through on our chain.
Cool. So you mentioned a lot of ways like how the user can get in trouble, but now my question is, what are the actual implementations that are already out there on the market, and users can, like, how can users feel the power of the chain abstraction? Let's put it this way.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Like, how, like, are there any like use cases and implementations of the chain abstraction that users can use right now?
Oh yeah. So basically, we've been talking to a bunch of apps, a bunch of wallets. I think wallets are a great place to kind of have chain abstraction in the first place. It's like almost permissionless. So outside of that, I think almost everyone we met here today who's building something either in DeFi or even in gaming and things like that are talking about how they want to make the entire experience quite seamless. But I think the most interesting place is the fact that a lot of these guys, whether they're games or DeFi apps, etc., they're all talking about wanting to build their own app chain and have their own native token. And their big problem is, how do I get this liquidity if I'm going to be that, right? So what we tell them, and this probably goes against the grain of what we've been warned against by Arjun, and we spoke about it earlier, is that we tell them that, here's how you can actually kind of make this happen. You be an app chain, you have your own token, user has their funds on whatever chain, you become the solver, essentially, for this token of yours. It is centralized, but it does the job for you. And you're able to now accept tokens from the user on whatever chain that they have it, and allow, essentially on their behalf, spend these tokens on this newly launched chain. And that's how you bootstrap your TVL, your usage, and all of these sorts of things. It is centralized, it is slightly problematic, but it's how these guys can essentially bootstrap their own chain. Because what can happen is there can be many of these people who build these chains, and tomorrow, some charming founder or competitor will intellectualize how this is completely not safe and you shouldn't be using a chain like this. But at the end of the day, if the user wants to use that app on that particular chain, that's their choice. And it's not a chain abstraction problem, in my opinion. But that's the use case that we really like.
I wanted you to go first, just switch up the order here. But and some of the chain abstraction wallet stuff you guys are doing, I find very interesting too. I think the observation is, I think it's worth calling out the tension that app chains face today. So if I'm going to launch a new project, I have this kind of pressure to have my own L2. And that's kind of interesting, kind of think about why. Maybe it's because I want to have a token for it or something else, I don't know. But there's like this pressure where I want to have my application on my own L2, but then I want the thing to be usable, right? So if I'm going to build an app chain, I have to think about chain abstraction from day one, because otherwise I have no users and no ways to get to that chain. And so I think a first usable step is if an app chain can use an intent-based bridge. I'll try not to shill myself too much, but we'll say a cross or something like that. Then you at least have a way for them to get funds to that chain to go and do something. I think it's really interesting if you think about existing apps on general purpose chains. Do they want to think about the chain abstraction problem? They want to make it easy for their users, but there's also more work and more UX and more stuff for them to do. Should that problem be solved at the wallet level? I mean, maybe. I think Vitalik put out a tweet a while ago where it's like, change 200,000 dApps or change 20 wallets. Maybe changing 20 wallets makes sense. But then we also know that a lot of the wallets that exist today move incredibly slowly, too. So I guess to answer your question, applications want to be usable from anywhere. If you're an application on a general purpose chain, you can have access to all those users easily. If you're not, you got to figure out a way to make it easy for users to use your application. That's all I was going to add.
Yeah, I'm really bullish on app chains as well at this point. I think every major application will become their own chain, and there's a lot of really good reasons for that, right? Like consolidating your liquidity in a single place, really sovereignty, right? Like you are Reddit or some other major Web2 organization. Are you going to be okay with like your RPC going down because someone is also simultaneously launching some sort of like Ponzi scheme on the same chain? Probably not. And so it's like the more that you hit scale, like the more like companies even in Web2 are like, yeah, we want to verticalize and own everything ourselves, so that way we can deliver the absolute guarantee of uptime. However, the question was around today's available chain abstracted experiences. To be honest, it's still a little bit early. However, there is one that I think is really interesting and that I'm actually giving a talk about tomorrow here, which is Renzo. Has anyone here used Renzo on any of the L2s? No? Yeah. So Renzo, this was honestly like really early, really ahead of the curve. At the start of this year, they were just like, we think that easy ETH works if it is as easy as possible to get. Regardless of where you are, you should just be able to hit the button and with ETH and just get easy ETH. And it makes sense, right? That's exactly what users want. They don't have to think about like, I'm on Arbitrum and I need to bridge to Ethereum in order to be able to generate easy ETH. And so Renzo created this like system for doing that that we worked with them on, where it wasn't really like an intent-based bridge. It's a slightly different approach to chain abstraction, but similar kind of concept, right? Renzo immediately delivered easy ETH to the user, and then on the back end, they handled the process of bridging like large amounts, millions of dollars worth of ETH a day from L2s to L1 in large batches. And that created this really seamless experience for users, where as a user, right, rather than having to think about like, even in the cross case, right, like L2 to L2 interactions and L1 to L2 interactions are fantastic. But the L2 to L1 interactions are kind of shitty, because like you're a user, you have your funds on L2, you do this L2 to L1 interaction, you are paying L1 gas for it. And that was like the big challenge that Renzo was seeing. And so with Renzo, what they did was they made it so that you were really only ever paying L2 gas fees. Renzo was like fronting the easy ETH needed to you to get your easy ETH immediately as soon as you interacted with the app. You were paying like cents in gas fees. And then behind the scenes, Renzo was the one that was handling bridging in like large batches. And yes, they were paying Ethereum gas for it, but then, what's like $50 in Ethereum gas out of a $1 million transaction?
Well, thanks for mentioning that user flow, because I don't have to explain half of how Ultra ETH works. So the first part of that actually is like exactly that. We are also minting it upfront for users. So as a result, users gets it instantly when they're like still on linear, right? Like, so they got it instantly. So users are very happy. They can move it obviously up to limit, and there are like some edge cases, but like up to a limit, they can move it instantly. But on top of Renzo's, like, we acknowledge there's like actually really amazing UX, and as a result, we kind of followed on that. But we actually improved that and took it further. The way we improved on it is now, once you have this token, you can use that as a almost interchangeably as an Ethereum value across any L2. So imagine now you have like this linear L2, like Ultra ETH. Now you want to go, like, let's say on Base, there's a degen token that you want to get, right? So now you can actually instantly like bridge it to Ultra ETH that is on Base, and then go exchange that into degen, right, or whatever you want to do. So that, and the second thing I want to mention is that this is actually like, I don't take credit for this design, because I think CCTP actually pioneered this kind of design, which is like, like with USDC, you can move USDC very, very fast across different chain by like, I think the design was like not locking. Instead, it was like also more safe because of that. It was like burning and minting on the other chain. So use very similar approach to, basically you can burn ETH now almost, right? And like mint it on the other chain. So it allows you to move safely Ethereum denominated value very, very fast. Now to tie it back to the chain abstraction, it's almost not just chain abstraction, it's also value abstraction. So like now, if you want to have ETH basically almost in any chain, instead of holding ETH, you can just hold Ultra ETH, right? And you have basically ETH denominated value, and like Ultra BTC is coming as well, so you'll be able to do that, and you'll be able to move across. Basically, like you can have value almost in any chain. You don't have to worry about it, and then just move it across, and just use any of the dexes to move into other values almost instantly. So yeah, so super useful use case for value abstraction perspective.
So Supra, currently we're in internal staging net. We're not even live on testnet yet. It's going to be next week, which is exciting. But so because of that, thank you. We don't have any live use cases to share about, okay, this is what you can do on Supra right now to experience a very good user UX. But I will share kind of the vision and like paint the picture of an example here. As a quick background, I used to work at Gelato, which is like a RAS provider. So I'm also very bullish on the app chain space. I think there's a lot of value propositions in wanting to have your own dedicated execution environment, having that governance control of an app chain L2 or L3. But that was also like as a caveat until I was pitched the idea about containerization with Supra. And that really solves the problem, or at least we're aiming to solve that problem with our go-to-market, of allowing a general blockchain like composability within an app chain space. So you can kind of think of, from a user point of view, let's say you're interacting with like Ondo Finance, which, or Plume, these real-world asset chains that you need a KYC gating to get in, to be compliant, and to utilize securities in a DeFi manner. There's going to be the onboarding issue, there's going to be the KYC issues, and there's also the issues of bringing liquidity onto there. With Supra, having all of the liquidity, the user base already here, and we're also actually already KYC'd 500K users, and we're rolling out a ZK KYC and AML stack to easily prove with one ZK proof that you've been KYC'd and start to enter these type of ecosystems and different containers building on top of Supra. A user journey wanting to leverage real-world asset yields, wanting to go into these permission markets, can look as simple as not changing RPC, still being on Supra, taking your funds, doing a ZK proof, entering into Ondo, doing these assets, and then leaving. I think that's going to be something that's very exciting to see unfold.
The Supra model is really, really interesting. One quick question I have about it is, like, since users are already holding funds on other chains, would you still need chain abstraction to allow for users to be able to interact with applications built on Supra in the first place?
Yeah, 100%. That's why we need people like you guys. We're bullish on it. We want to be composable. But then at the same time, we also want to minimize the amount of time where users have to be utilizing chain abstraction, have to be moving between chains. As much as possible, we believe like that something can happen within one ecosystem that does provide like a better UX.
Got it. Makes sense.
Cool. So we ran out of time, but I still want to ask one quick question. How can you describe the future of chain abstraction in one word?
Click buttons. I'll do 2 words. That's yeah.
Can I do like hyphenate 4, 5 words?
Keep it simple.
Hyphenated paragraph.
I'll just say inevitable. Yeah.
Intense. With an SE. Yeah.
Instant.
Bullish.
Nice. Thank you so much. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you for this panel and your time.